My own daughter looked me straight in the eye and said she'd always loved her father more than me. 2 days later, she called me at 3 in the morning, demanding $3,000 to get out of some seedy nightclub. I told her to call Daddy. The police station call I received 12 hours later changed everything I thought I knew about being a good mother. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up raising a 25-year-old woman who thinks I'm her personal ATM while worshiping the man who abandoned us both. Because trust me, this story starts long before that devastating phone call. My name is Patricia Collins, and for the past 7 years, I've been walking on eggshells around my own child. It started when her father, Derek, decided our marriage was suffocating his dreams and moved out to find himself with his 23-year-old secretary. Cliché? Absolutely. Predictable? You bet. Devastating. More than I care to admit. But here's the thing about divorce when you have kids. Suddenly, you're competing for your child's affection with someone who has zero responsibilities and unlimited guilt money. Derek rented a flashy downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. I kept our modest 3-bedroom house with the mortgage, the memories, and the daily responsibility of actually raising our daughter, Emma, while I was enforcing curfews, checking homework, and saying no to expensive requests. Daddy Dearest was taking Emma to fancy restaurants, buying her designer clothes, and letting her stay out all night, because she's practically an adult. The custody arrangement was supposedly 50-50, but Emma quickly figured out which parent was more fun. Friday afternoons became a routine of watching her pack a weekend bag with genuine excitement, chattering about whatever adventure Derek had planned. Sunday evenings were the reverse. Sullen returns, complaints about my boring house, and constant comparisons to Daddy's exciting life. Dad says I don't need to worry about college debt because he's going to pay for everything, she announced one Tuesday during her senior year, rolling her eyes when I suggested she apply for scholarships as backup. Dad says working part-time during high school is old-fashioned. He wants me to focus on having fun while I'm young. Dad says you're too strict. He never had all these rules growing up. Each conversation felt like a small knife twist, but I kept telling myself it was normal. Divorce was hard on kids. She'd understand when she was older. I just had to be patient and keep being the responsible parent, even if it made me the villain. But the real damage was happening during those weekend visits I wasn't seeing. Derek had turned charm into an art form during our marriage, and now he was using those same skills on Emma. He'd listen to her complaints about my rules with exaggerated sympathy, nodding along as she painted me as an unreasonable tyrant. He'd slip her extra cash because Mom's being cheap again, and take her shopping for things I'd specifically said we couldn't afford. Most insidiously, he'd share just enough of his dating adventures to make Emma feel like his confidant rather than his child. She knew about his girlfriends, his plans to buy a sports car, his dreams of traveling Europe. He treated her like a friend, not a daughter, and she ate it up. Meanwhile, I was still playing the mother role, making sure she did her homework, got to doctor's appointments, learned responsibility. All the unglamorous stuff that nobody thanks you for, but everyone notices if you don't do it. By Emma's college graduation, the battle lines were clearly drawn. She'd majored in art history and moved back home with vague plans to figure things out. Derek supported her creative journey and told her not to rush into anything boring like a career. I gently suggested maybe getting a job while she figured things out, which made me the enemy of dreams everywhere. That's when the real manipulation started. Mom's pressuring me to get some minimum wage job, Emma would tell Derek during their weekly coffee dates. She doesn't understand that I need time to find my passion. Your mom always was practical to a fault, Derek would reply with his trademark concerned frown. Don't let her kill your artistic spirit, sweetheart. I'll help support you while you explore your options. What Emma didn't know was that Derek's support consisted mainly of encouraging words and the occasional fancy dinner. The actual financial support, rent, food, insurance, phone bills, that was still coming from me. But somehow, in Emma's mind, Daddy was the generous one enabling her dreams, while Mommy was the cold-hearted realist trying to crush them. The dynamic reached its peak last month when Emma announced she was planning to move to New York to pursue opportunities in the art world. When I asked about practical details like housing and income, she accused me of being unsupportive. When Derek nodded along to her plans without offering any actual assistance, he was being encouraging. But I should have seen the breaking point coming. It arrived on a Tuesday evening when I made the mistake of asking Emma to contribute $50 toward groceries since she'd eaten through a week's worth of food in 3 days. $50? She laughed, not looking up from her phone. For what? For the food you eat, the electricity you use, maybe just a token contribution to the household you're living in rent-free. She finally looked at me then, and I saw Derek's expression on her face. That mixture of condescension and amusement that used to make my blood pressure spike during our marriage. Mom, I don't have $50. I'm an artist. This is my creative period. Emma, you're 25 years old. You've been in your creative period for 3 years. That's when she exploded. You know what your problem is, Mom. You've always been jealous that I have a better relationship with Dad than with you. He actually supports my dreams instead of constantly criticizing everything I do. The words hit like a physical blow, but I tried to keep my voice level. Sweetheart, I'm not criticizing your dreams. I'm asking you to help with basic living expenses while you're pursuing them. Dad said you'd react like this. He said you've always resented that I prefer spending time with him. And there it was. The poison Derek had been dripping in her ear for 7 years, finally out in the open. What Emma didn't know was that her precious father had been playing both sides of this game for years. While he was positioning himself as her supportive champion, he'd been systematically undermining every parenting decision I made. The pattern was always the same. I'd establish a boundary or consequence, Emma would complain to Derek, and he'd swoop in as the understanding parent who really got her. But he never actually contradicted me directly. That would require taking real responsibility. Instead, he'd use phrases like, "Well, I understand your mom's perspective, but," or, "Maybe your mom's just stressed about money again." It was death by 1,000 cuts, each conversation slowly eroding Emma's respect for me while positioning Derek as her ally against the unreasonable woman who'd raised her. The weekend after our grocery store argument, Emma went to stay with Derek as usual. I knew she'd spend the entire visit complaining about my unreasonable demands, and Derek would listen with practiced sympathy, maybe even slip her some cash to ease the sting of having such a difficult mother. What I didn't expect was the call I received from Derek himself that Sunday evening. "Patricia, we need to talk about Emma." His voice had that serious, concerned tone he'd perfected during our marriage, the one that always preceded him explaining how I was handling something wrong. "What about Emma? She's really upset about this money situation. You're putting too much pressure on her." I took a deep breath, reminding myself not to engage with his manipulation tactics. "Derek, Emma is 25 years old and has been living in my house rent-free for 3 years. Asking her to contribute $50 toward groceries isn't pressure, it's basic responsibility. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You've always been so rigid about money. Emma's going through a creative period. She needs support, not stress. And what kind of support are you providing exactly?" There was a pause. Derek had always been excellent at offering emotional support and terrible at offering anything practical. "I'm providing emotional encouragement, which is what she needs right now. Not everyone has to turn everything into a transaction, Patricia." "Right. So I handle the transactions while you provide the encouragement. Same arrangement we had during our marriage. Look, I'm calling because I'm worried about Emma. She says you've been making little comments, creating a hostile environment." I almost laughed. Hostile environment? I asked her to buy groceries. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Emma feels like you resent her success. What success, Derek? She graduated 3 years ago and hasn't held a job since. She's exploring her options. Building her portfolio. Not everyone follows the same traditional path you did. There it was. The subtle implication that my approach to life was somehow lesser, more conventional, less enlightened. Derek had been making comments like that throughout our marriage, always with just enough ambiguity that I couldn't call him out directly. "Derek, if you're so concerned about Emma's well-being, perhaps you'd like to contribute to her living expenses. Or better yet, she could move in with you." Another pause. This was always where Derek's supportive father act hit reality. "You know, my living situation isn't set up for long-term guests. And frankly, I think Emma benefits from having stability at home while she figures things out." Translation: He liked playing the fun parent on weekends, but had zero interest in dealing with the day-to-day reality of supporting an adult child. Then I'd suggest you support my efforts to help her become independent, instead of undermining them. Patricia, I'm not undermining anything. I'm just saying maybe there's a gentler approach. Emma's sensitive. Emma was 25 years old and sensitive about being asked to buy groceries. But somehow, this was my fault for being too demanding rather than Derek's fault for enabling her complete lack of responsibility. The conversation ended with Derek suggesting I think about how my approach was affecting Emma's emotional well-being, as if the past 7 years of watching my daughter choose her father over me at every opportunity hadn't already given me plenty to think about. That week, Emma barely spoke to me except to make pointed comments about how some people didn't understand that creativity couldn't be rushed. She started spending even more time at Derek's place, often not coming home until late at night, sometimes not at all. When I asked where she'd been, she'd give vague answers about working on projects or networking with other artists. But her portfolio remained unchanged, and her networking seemed to consist mainly of going to expensive restaurants and clubs with Derek and his rotating cast of 20-something girlfriends. The breaking point came the following Tuesday, exactly a week after our grocery store argument. I'd had a particularly difficult day at work. Budget cuts at the hospital where I worked as a nurse meant longer hours and more stress for everyone. I came home to find Emma in the kitchen, having apparently made herself an elaborate meal using ingredients I'd planned for the entire week. Emma? Those were the groceries for this week. She looked up from her plate with Derek's exact expression of mild annoyance. Mom, I was hungry. I'll replace whatever I used. With what money? Dad said he might give me some spending money this weekend. Might. This weekend. So I should just wait and hope your father follows through on his vague promises while I figure out what to eat for the rest of the week. Emma's eyes narrowed. You know what? I'm tired of walking on eggshells in my own house. Your house? Emma, I pay the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, and apparently all the food. What exactly makes this your house? That's when she stood up, her face flushed with anger that looked eerily familiar. Fine. You want to know how I really feel? I've always loved Dad more than you. You're so annoying with your constant rules and complaints and making everything about money. That's why he left Mom. Because you're exhausting to live with. The words hung in the air between us like poison gas. 7 years of careful manipulation had led to this moment, my own daughter telling me that my husband's abandonment was my fault, and that she'd always preferred the parent who'd actually abandoned her. Emma, your father left because he was having an affair with his secretary. Whatever. At least he's not bitter and controlling like you are. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? To Dad's, where I'm actually welcome. The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the meal she'd made with my groceries, before telling me she'd never loved me as much as the man who saw her twice a week and contributed nothing to her actual well-being. But that night was just the beginning. Emma didn't come home that night, or the next night. On Thursday, I received a text. Staying with Dad for a while. Need space to think. I wanted to call Derek and demand he send her home, but I knew that would only validate Emma's narrative that I was controlling and unreasonable. Besides, part of me wondered if maybe some space would be good for both of us. Maybe she needed time to realize how much I actually did for her. By Saturday, I was questioning everything. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe I had been too focused on practical concerns instead of emotional support. Maybe my approach really was driving Emma away. That's the insidious thing about emotional manipulation. Even when you can see it clearly, it still makes you doubt yourself. Friday came and went without any communication from Emma. I tried to keep busy with work and household tasks, but the silence felt oppressive. Our house had never been particularly lively, but Emma's complete absence left an emptiness that was almost suffocating. Saturday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Going out with friends tonight. Will probably be late. At least she was letting me know her plans, which felt like progress. I went to bed around 11, telling myself that maybe this space was exactly what we both needed. At 3:17 a.m., my phone rang. I jolted awake, my heart immediately racing. Nobody calls at 3 a.m. with good news. The number on my screen was Emma's, but when I answered, the voice that came through was pure panic. Mom, I need help. My card was declined, and they won't let me leave this club, and I need $3,000 right now, or they're going to call the police. I sat up in bed, trying to process what I was hearing through the fog of sleep and adrenaline. Emma, slow down. What club? $3,000 for what? I can't explain everything right now, but I'm at this private club downtown, and I ran up a tab, and now they're saying my card was declined and they want cash payment before I can leave. And Mom, I'm scared. There are these guys here, and they're being really aggressive about the money. My maternal instincts kicked in immediately. Whatever had happened between us, Emma was my daughter, and she was scared. Okay, breathe. What's the name of the club? I'll come get you. No, you can't come here. They said they only want cash, no personal checks or anything like that. Just straight cash, $3,000. Something about her tone was off, the words coming too fast, like she was reading from a script. Emma, $3,000? What kind of club charges $3,000? Mom, please, I can't explain everything right now, but I really need you to send the money. I can pay you back, I promise. Dad said he'd give me some money this weekend, and… Wait, where is your father in all this? There was a pause. In the background, I could hear what sounded like music and conversation, but nothing that suggested Emma was in immediate danger. He's not answering his phone right now. Not answering his phone at 3 a.m. when his daughter needs $3,000? Mom, please, can you just help me? I'll transfer the money to you as soon as I get home, I swear. I looked at the ceiling of my bedroom, the same bedroom I'd shared with Derek before he decided I was too suffocating for his dreams. The same bedroom where I'd cried myself to sleep countless nights after Emma chose him over me. The same bedroom where I'd questioned whether I was really as terrible a mother as they both seemed to think. Emma, you just told me 2 days ago that you've always loved your father more than me because I'm so annoying and exhausting. You said my focus on money and responsibility is why your father left. Now you're calling me at 3 a.m. asking for $3,000 that you'll pay back with money your father might give you this weekend? Mom, this isn't the time for… No, Emma, I think this is exactly the time. You've spent 3 years living in my house rent-free while telling me how unreasonable I am for asking you to contribute $50 toward groceries. You've spent 7 years choosing your father over me every time, despite the fact that I'm the one who's actually supported you financially and emotionally. And now you want me to send you $3,000 at 3 a.m. to get you out of whatever mess you've gotten yourself into? Mom, please, I'm scared. But I wasn't hearing fear anymore. I was hearing manipulation. The same tone Derek used to use when he wanted something from me, making his poor choices my emergency. Emma, here's what you're going to do. You're going to call your father, the one you love more than me, and ask him for $3,000. Since he's been telling you for 7 years that he's so supportive and I'm so unreasonable, this seems like the perfect opportunity for him to prove it. Mom, he's not answering. Then keep calling. Text him. Show up at his apartment. Figure it out. You're 25 years old, and you've made it clear that you don't need my help or my guidance. So don't ask for my money. I can't believe you're doing this to me. For a moment, I almost caved. Almost apologized and asked for the address so I could rush downtown with my credit card and fix whatever mess she'd gotten into. Because that's what I'd been doing for 25 years, fixing things, cleaning up messes, being the responsible parent while Derek got to be the fun one. But then I remembered her face when she told me she'd always loved him more. I remembered 7 years of being undermined and dismissed and treated like an ATM with an attitude problem. Emma, I love you. But I'm not sending you $3,000 at 3 a.m. to solve a problem that your beloved father should be handling. Call Daddy. Ask him for help. Let him prove how supportive he really is. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. But for the first time in years, it wasn't from fear or hurt. It was from the adrenaline of finally saying no to the manipulation that had been controlling my life since Derek left. I turned off my phone and went back to sleep. But I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. I woke up Saturday morning feeling something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. For the first time since Emma had moved back home, my house was quiet, not because she was sulking, but because I'd finally stopped enabling her emotional manipulation. I made coffee in my favorite mug, sat on my back porch, and watched the sunrise. No crisis to manage, no manipulation to navigate. No guilt to carry for someone else's poor choices. Just silence and the realization that I'd been holding my breath for 7 years without realizing it. Around 10 o'clock, I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls from Emma, 12 text messages ranging from pleading to angry to guilt-inducing, and 3 voicemails I deleted without listening to. Nothing from Derek. Interesting. If Emma had really been in danger, if there had really been aggressive men demanding cash at some seedy club, wouldn't her beloved father have eventually answered his phone? Wouldn't he have rushed to help his precious daughter? The silence from Derek told me everything I needed to know about the legitimacy of Emma's emergency. I spent Saturday doing all the things I'd stopped doing while tiptoeing around Emma's moods. I cleaned the house thoroughly, went grocery shopping without worrying about someone eating a week's worth of food in one sitting, and even called my sister Linda for the first time in months. Patricia, it's so good to hear from you. How are things with Emma? Complicated, but maybe getting less complicated. I didn't go into details, but it felt good to talk to someone who remembered who I was before I became the villain in Derek and Emma's story. Sunday morning brought the call I'd been expecting, though not from who I'd expected. Mrs. Collins, this is Officer Martinez with the Downtown Police Department. I'm calling about your daughter, Emma Collins. My heart stopped. Despite my anger and hurt, Emma was still my child, and the fear that I'd let something terrible happen to her by not sending the money hit me like a physical blow. Is she okay? Was she hurt? She's fine, ma'am, but she's here at the station and she's asked us to call you. At the station? What happened? Ma'am, your daughter was involved in an incident at a private gaming establishment downtown. She accumulated a significant debt and was unable to pay. The establishment filed a complaint when she couldn't settle the account. Gaming establishment. Not a seedy club. Not aggressive men threatening her safety. A casino or illegal gambling operation where Emma had lost money she didn't have. Officer Martinez, can you tell me how much money we're talking about? The complaint lists $3,200. $3,000. Exactly the amount she'd needed me to send at 3 in the morning. Emma hadn't been in danger from threatening men. She'd been in trouble for gambling with money she didn't have. Ma'am, are you able to come down and pick up your daughter? Officer, I have a question. Is my daughter under arrest? No, ma'am. The establishment filed a civil complaint, but we were able to mediate the situation. Your daughter was released on her own recognizance with the understanding that the debt would be settled within 72 hours. And if it's not settled, then it becomes a matter for civil court, possibly criminal court, if fraud charges are filed. I sat down heavily on my couch. Emma had gambled away $3,000, lied to me about being in danger, tried to manipulate me into paying her debts, and was now facing potential fraud charges if the money wasn't paid by Tuesday. Mrs. Collins? Are you there? Yes, I'm here. Officer Martinez, can you tell me if my daughter's father was contacted about this situation? Let me check. Yes, ma'am. Derek Collins was contacted but declined to come to the station. He said he wasn't able to assist with the situation at this time. Of course he did. Derek, the supportive father who understood Emma so much better than her unreasonable mother, had declined to help when his precious daughter was actually in trouble. Mrs. Collins, your daughter is asking to speak with you. Put her on. Emma's voice was small and scared, completely different from the confident woman who'd told me I was too annoying to love just 4 days earlier. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up, but I really need your help. Emma, you lied to me. You told me you were in danger when you'd actually been gambling. I was scared, I panicked, but Mom, if I don't pay this money by Tuesday, they're going to press charges. And where is your father in all this? The one who's so much more supportive than me? Silence. Emma, he said he can't get involved in this kind of situation. He said it would be bad for his business reputation. Derek's business reputation was more important than keeping his daughter out of jail. But somehow I was still the unreasonable parent in this scenario. Mom, please. I know I said terrible things to you, but I really need your help. I'll do anything you want. I'll get a job. I'll pay rent. I'll pay you back every penny. For 7 years, Emma had been Derek's princess, the daughter who preferred his permissive, consequence-free approach to parenting. For 7 years, she'd treated me like an obstacle to overcome rather than a parent to respect. But Derek wasn't answering his phone when she needed $3,000 to stay out of jail. I thought about the woman I'd been before my marriage fell apart. Strong, capable, unwilling to be taken advantage of. I thought about the woman I'd become afterward, constantly second-guessing herself, walking on eggshells, accepting emotional crumbs from her own child. Mrs. Collins? Officer Martinez was back on the line. Your daughter needs to be picked up, and we need to know how this debt situation will be resolved. I looked around my quiet house, my peaceful house, the house that had been stress-free for exactly 48 hours. Officer Martinez, please tell my daughter that her father will be handling this situation. She should call him and work out the arrangements directly. Ma'am, I believe she's already tried to contact her father. Then she should try harder. I'm not available to help with this. I hung up the phone and immediately called Derek. He answered on the first ring. Patricia, I was wondering when you'd call. Your daughter is sitting in a police station because she owes $3,000 to a gambling establishment. The police say you declined to help. This is exactly the kind of situation I was talking about. Emma needs support and understanding, not judgment. Derek, she needs $3,000 to avoid fraud charges. That's not judgment, that's reality. Look, Patricia, I can't just drop everything and rush downtown with a checkbook every time Emma makes a mistake. I have responsibilities. But I can? Silence. Derek, for 7 years, you've positioned yourself as the understanding, supportive parent, while I've been the bad guy for trying to teach Emma responsibility. Now she's in real trouble, and you're nowhere to be found. Where's all that support now? This is different. This is serious legal trouble. Exactly. This is what happens when children don't learn consequences. This is what happens when one parent enables and the other parent gets blamed for being realistic. My phone beeped with another call. Emma, I have to go, Derek. Your daughter is calling me again, probably because her beloved father won't help her. I switched to Emma's call. Mom, Dad said he can't help me because of his business reputation. Mom, I'm really scared. If I get arrested, I'll have a criminal record. I'll never get a real job. And there it was. The consequences Emma had never had to face before were finally catching up with her, and Derek was nowhere to be found. But then Emma said something that made my blood run cold. Mom, there's something else I need to tell you about what really happened last night. Mom, the gambling thing, that's not the whole story. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean, Emma? I wasn't alone at the casino. I was with Jason. Jason was Derek's latest girlfriend's 26-year-old son, a trust fund kid with a cocaine habit and a taste for expensive trouble. Emma had mentioned him a few times over the past month, always with the kind of breathless excitement that meant she had a crush. Emma, what does Jason have to do with this? He's the one who brought me to the casino. He said he knew people there, that he could get us into the VIP room. He said he'd teach me how to play poker properly. My nurse instincts kicked in. I could hear the shame in her voice, the careful way she was choosing her words. There was more to this story. Emma, exactly what happened last night. We were playing poker and drinking, and Jason kept saying I was getting better at reading people. He was encouraging me to bet bigger amounts. And I was winning at first, Mom. I was actually winning a lot. But then you started losing. It happened so fast. One hand I was up almost $2,000, and the next hand I lost everything, plus the $3,000 I didn't have. This was sounding less like bad luck and more like a setup. Emma, where was Jason when you needed the $3,000? Silence. Emma? He left. He left? While you were stuck there unable to pay your debt? He said he couldn't get involved because his trust fund has restrictions about gambling debts. He said if his family found out he was at an illegal casino, they'd cut him off. So Derek's girlfriend's son had taken Emma to an illegal casino, encouraged her to bet money she didn't have, then abandoned her when the situation went bad. And Derek, who'd been telling me for years that I didn't understand Emma's needs, had refused to help his daughter when she was facing fraud charges. Mom, I think Jason set me up. I think the whole thing was planned. He kept insisting we go to this specific casino, and he knew exactly which games to play and which dealers to approach. And when I started losing, it was like he'd expected it. My daughter, who'd spent 7 years telling me I was too controlling and suspicious, was finally understanding what real manipulation looked like. Emma, did you tell the police about Jason's involvement? I couldn't. If I told them Jason brought me there, he said his family would sue me for defamation. He said they have expensive lawyers and I'd be destroyed financially. so Jason gets to walk away clean while you face potential criminal charges. Mom, I know I've been awful to you. I know I said terrible things, and I chose Dad over you, and I've been ungrateful for everything you've done. But right now, I really need my mother. 7 years of emotional manipulation. 7 years of being treated like a second-class parent. 7 years of watching Derek undermine every boundary I tried to set while positioning himself as the understanding father. And now, when Emma was in real trouble, Derek had vanished, and his girlfriend's son had used my daughter as a pawn in some kind of casino scam. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. How long has your father known about your relationship with Jason? Another pause. This one longer. Emma, he introduced us about 2 months ago. He said Jason was a good guy from a good family and that I should get to know him better. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Derek had introduced Emma to a gambling addict trust fund kid, knowing full well what kind of influence Jason would be. He'd encouraged their relationship, probably enjoying the idea that Emma was dating someone from a wealthy family. And when their relationship led Emma into serious trouble, Derek had disappeared faster than a magic trick. Mom, I know you probably think I deserve this. I know I've been terrible to you. I closed my eyes, thinking about the woman I'd been before Derek's manipulation campaign began. Before I started second-guessing every parenting decision. Before I became afraid of my own daughter's disapproval. Emma, I don't think you deserve to have criminal charges hanging over your head. But I also don't think I should have to clean up the messes created by your father's judgment about appropriate people for you to date. So you won't help me? I thought about Derek, probably having brunch with his current girlfriend while his daughter sat in a police station. I thought about Jason, safe in his trust fund bubble, while Emma faced fraud charges. I thought about 7 years of being painted as the unreasonable parent, while Derek collected all the credit for being supportive. Emma, I'll help you, but there are going to be conditions. Anything, Mom. I'll do anything. First, you're going to tell me everything about your relationship with Jason and exactly how last night happened. No lies, no omissions, nothing left out. Okay. Second, you're moving back home today and you're getting a job this week. Not eventually. Not when you feel ready, this week. Yes, absolutely. Third, you're going to have a conversation with your father about his role in this situation and his decision to abandon you when you needed help. Mom, I don't think Dad will... Emma, your father introduced you to someone who led you into serious legal trouble, then refused to help when that trouble materialized. If he wants any relationship with you going forward, he's going to have to explain himself. And if he won't? I looked out my kitchen window at the garden I'd planted alone, in the house I'd maintained alone, thinking about the daughter I'd essentially raised alone while Derek played weekend father. Then you'll finally understand the difference between a parent who enables and a parent who actually protects you. I could hear Emma crying on the other end of the line. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything I said and everything I did, and for choosing Dad over you when you were the one taking care of me the whole time. Emma, we'll talk about all of that when you get home. Right now, I need to figure out how to get you out of this mess without destroying my retirement savings. What do you mean? I hadn't told Emma about the second mortgage I'd taken on the house to pay for her college expenses, the ones Derek had promised to cover but never actually contributed to. I hadn't told her about the credit card debt I'd accumulated covering her living expenses while she found herself. I hadn't told her that $3,000 represented a significant chunk of my emergency fund. Never mind. I'll pick you up in an hour. But as I hung up the phone, I realized this situation was bigger than just Emma's gambling debt. Derek had been playing a long game, manipulating both of us for 7 years, and I was beginning to suspect that Emma's trouble with Jason wasn't an accident. It was time to find out exactly what Derek had been planning all along. I discovered my ex-husband had been stealing from our daughter's college fund for 2 years while positioning me as the financially irresponsible parent. When I confronted him with the bank statements, he tried to convince me I was having memory problems. The recording I made of that conversation became evidence in a federal fraud investigation. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. The drive to pick up Emma from the police station gave me time to think, and what I was thinking made my blood pressure spike. Too many things weren't adding up about Derek's behavior over the past few months. When Emma had moved back home 3 years ago, Derek had made a big show of promising to help with her expenses. "She's our daughter, Patricia. We should support her dreams together." But his actual contributions had been minimal. Maybe a dinner here, some spending money there, never anything substantial. Meanwhile, I'd been covering her phone bill, car insurance, medical expenses, and living costs. When I'd asked Derek about his promised support, he'd always had excuses. "Cash flow is tight this month," or "the business has some unexpected expenses." But Derek's lifestyle certainly hadn't reflected any financial struggles. New car, expensive vacations with his rotating girlfriends, designer clothes, that flashy downtown loft. If he was struggling financially, he was hiding it well. At the police station, Emma looked like a scared child rather than the confident young woman who'd told me I was too annoying to love. Her makeup was smeared, her clothes wrinkled, and her usual defiant posture had been replaced by hunched shoulders and nervous fidgeting. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly as we walked to my car. "We'll talk when we get home." The ride was silent except for Emma's occasional sniffles. I wasn't ready to comfort her yet. I needed answers first. Back at the house, I made coffee and sat across from Emma at the kitchen table. Same table where she'd told me she'd always loved her father more. Same table where she'd laughed about contributing $50 to groceries. But this time, the power dynamic was completely different. "Tell me about Jason," I said without preamble. Emma wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like it was a lifeline. "Dad introduced us about 2 months ago. He said Jason's mother was someone he was dating seriously, and that Jason and I might have a lot in common." "What kind of things in common?" "Dad said Jason was also taking time to figure out his life path, that he understood the pressure young people face to rush into careers. He said Jason's family was very successful and understood the value of taking time to make the right decisions." Classic Derek manipulation, making Emma's lack of direction sound sophisticated while connecting her with someone whose family had money. "When did the gambling start?" "About 3 weeks ago. Jason said he knew about private clubs where successful people went to network. He said it wasn't really about the gambling. It was about meeting the right people and learning how business really works." "And you believe that?" Emma's face flushed. "Mom, I know how it sounds now, but Jason seemed so confident, so connected. He talked about these amazing business opportunities and how his family had made their fortune through strategic risk-taking." "Emma, his family made their fortune through inheritance and real estate development. Jason has never held a job in his life." "How do you know that?" I'd spent the morning doing research while Emma was at the police station. Amazing what you can learn about people when you actually look instead of just trusting someone else's characterization. Because unlike your father, I believe in investigating before trusting. "Tell me about last night specifically." Emma took a shaky breath. "Jason picked me up around 8. He said we were going to meet some of his business contacts at an exclusive club. When we got there, it was this upscale place but clearly focused on gambling. Jason seemed to know everyone." "How much money did you start with?" "Jason gave me $500. He said it was a loan to get me started, that I'd pay him back from my winnings." A loan. From a trust fund kid to a woman with no income. Another red flag that Emma had missed. "And you started winning immediately?" "Yes, it was incredible. Within an hour, I was up almost $2,000. Jason kept saying I was a natural, that I had great instincts for reading people." "Emma, you've never played poker before in your life." "I know. That's what made it so exciting. Jason said sometimes beginners have better luck because they're not overthinking things." I had to admire the setup. Get Emma winning immediately, build her confidence, make her think she had natural talent, then encourage bigger and bigger bets until the inevitable crash. When did things change? Around midnight. Jason suggested we move to a higher stakes table. He said the people there were the real business contacts he wanted me to meet. He said if I could hold my own at that table, doors would open for me. And that's when you lost everything. It happened so fast. Mom, one bad hand and everything was gone, plus money I didn't have. And Jason just vanished. He said he was going to the bathroom and never came back. I leaned back in my chair, processing the calculated nature of what had happened to my daughter. This wasn't just bad luck or poor judgment. This was a sophisticated con game. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Okay. How much does your father know about your finances, your bank account, your credit cards, your lack of income? Emma looked confused by the question. Everything, I guess. We talk about money sometimes. He knows I don't have a job and that you've been supporting me. He knows I don't have any significant savings. Has he ever asked you specific questions about my finances? How much I make? How much I have saved? Whether I own the house outright? Well, yes. Sometimes. He said he was concerned about whether you could afford to support me long term. He said maybe I should find out more about your financial situation so we could plan better. My stomach dropped. Derek hadn't just been manipulating Emma's relationship with me. He'd been gathering financial intelligence through her. Emma, have you ever given your father specific information about my bank accounts, my credit cards, or my financial documents? Mom, why are you asking these questions? Just answer me. Sometimes he'd ask if you seemed stressed about money, or if you'd mentioned anything about financial problems. And once? She trailed off. Once what? Once he asked me to take a picture of a document on your desk. He said it looked like something important, and he wanted to make sure you weren't hiding financial problems that might affect me. What document? It was something from the bank, about the house. Dad said he was worried you might be in trouble with the mortgage and not telling me. I felt like the floor was tilting. Emma, when was this? Maybe 6 months ago? 6 months ago, I'd been reviewing documents related to the second mortgage I'd taken to pay for Emma's college expenses. Expenses Derek had promised to cover but never did. Emma had unknowingly photographed confidential financial documents and sent them to her father. Derek hadn't just been emotionally manipulating us for 7 years. He'd been conducting financial surveillance through our daughter. Mom, you're scaring me. What's wrong? I stood up and walked to my home office. Emma following. I pulled out my filing cabinet and started looking through my financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents, everything Derek would need to understand my complete financial picture. Emma, I want you to look at something. I pulled out Emma's college expense records. Tuition payments, room and board, books, fees, all paid from my accounts. Total, $127,000 over 4 years. Do you see your father's name anywhere on these documents? Emma scanned the papers, her face growing pale. No. But Mom, Dad said he was contributing. He said he was handling things differently for tax purposes. Emma, your father contributed exactly $0 to your college education. I took out a second mortgage on this house to pay for your school. That can't be right. Dad always talked about how we were both investing in my education. I pulled out more documents. Medical expenses, car insurance, phone bills. All the things Derek claimed he was helping with. All paid solely by me. Emma, for the past 3 years, your father has contributed approximately $400 to your actual expenses, dinners and occasional spending money. I've contributed over $40,000. Emma sank into a chair, staring at the documents. But he always talks about supporting me. He always says he believes in investing in my future. Emma, your father's financial support has been almost entirely fictional. But his emotional manipulation has been very real. My phone buzzed. Derek. Patricia, I heard about Emma's situation. We need to talk. Yes, we certainly do. Can you meet me for coffee this afternoon? There are things you need to understand about what really happened last night. Something in his tone set off every alarm bell I had. Derek wanted to meet in person to discuss Emma's gambling incident. The same Derek who'd refused to help his daughter when she was sitting in a police station. Where do you want to meet? How about that cafe on 5th Street? Say, 3 o'clock? I looked at Emma, still staring at the financial documents that proved her beloved father had been lying to her for years. I'll be there. But I wasn't going alone, and I wasn't going unprepared. Because I was beginning to suspect that Emma's gambling disaster wasn't just a coincidence. It was the culmination of a plan Derek had been working on for months. I arrived at the cafe 30 minutes early and chose a corner table with clear sight lines to all entrances. Call it paranoia, but something about Derek's sudden interest in meeting face-to-face felt wrong. In 7 years of Emma-related crises, he'd never once suggested we meet to discuss solutions. Emma had wanted to come with me, but I'd convinced her to stay home. This conversation needed to happen without Derek being able to manipulate her emotions in real time. What Emma didn't know was that I wasn't really alone. My sister Linda was sitting 3 tables away, pretending to read a book, but actually recording everything on her phone. After discovering Derek's financial surveillance campaign, I decided turnabout was fair play. Derek arrived exactly on time, looking like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine. Expensive suit, perfect hair, that confident smile that had once made me feel lucky.